In this episode, we are going to be reviewing the Italian classic Seven Beauties from 1975. This was written and directed by Lina Wertmuller, and it starred Giancarlo Giannini, Fernando Rey, and Shirley Stoller. Welcome to Robert Bellissimo at the Movies. This is a video podcast where I talk about movies from all over the world and explore how those stories were told on film with a variety of guests. I want to welcome back Joe Crisafulli, who is a writer, director, and actor. His production company is called Zio Ciccio Cinema. Joe, welcome back. Glad that you can join me again today.
Thanks so much for having me. Glad to be here as always.
This is, I'm pretty new with Lina Wertmuller. I only saw The Seduction of Mimi maybe a year and a half ago. I just saw this 3 weeks just before New Year's, and I watched it again last night. Same with Swept Away. I just saw right after New Year's. I'm really blown away by her. I just love her movies, and I'm curious, have you seen this more than once? And if so, what was your initial impression of it?
Lina Wertmuller is someone who I was first really introduced to her in college. And so seeing this movie now, it's my second or third time seeing it. My first time in probably about 20 years though.
Okay.
Yeah, and with, I mean, she definitely gets you, she's in your face and she's not subtle. I think I wasn't initially attracted to her tone when I was a student because her tone wasn't really my vibe. And I'm sorry to say that because it's such an authentically, she's such an authentically Italian tone, every work of hers. And seeing it again this time, I'm very glad to say I had a totally new appreciation for everything that this movie has to offer. And I checked out those other two movies as well. Again, same deal, although I had seen both of them more recently at, I think it was Film Forum here in the city. So yes, this was my second or third time seeing all of them. It was definitely a revisit for me though.
I agree. I mean, she's so in your face and the films are so alive. I mean, there's barely room to breathe. And I think she has when there is room to breathe are at like the perfect moments. And I'm sure we'll get to that in a second. But she's this filmmaker, like she uses Black comedy and commedia dell'arte mixed with social consciousness. And I've never seen anyone do it quite like her. So looking at Seven Beauties, it's kind of hard to kind of pinpoint what it's truly about. So I'm curious what you feel it's truly about.
That's a great question. And I definitely have my own opinion. I think there's no doubt that a movie like Seven Beauties, like all of her movies, is an artist wrestling with the notion of Italian identity, not that there is just one.
When I was watching, not only Seven Beauties, but also Swept Away and The Seduction of Mimi, they start, you get comfortable in a certain feeling and you feel like it's going somewhere. Like The Seduction of Mimi, okay, at first I'm like, okay, this is going to be about unionizing. And then it's not about that, and then Swept Away feels like it's going to be a very left versus right political film. And then it really, it touches on that. And then it's not. And this film starts off with, this guy who's, with all of these, various women that they're all like his sisters and family. And you feel like, okay, it's going to be, she's talking about a certain Italian male, what I guess suppose people today would call like a toxic masculinity, so to speak, whatever you want to call it, machismo or whatever, a guy who sort of thinks he's so tough, but he loves the identity of someone who is tough and is violent and can slap a woman around, and that he's the guy in charge. Even the way that Giannini is walking around in the streets, all the people seem to like him. But you know, when I watched it the second time, I could see how much he's putting it on, like the way he walks, the way he smiles. He's wearing this thick mask, and then it suddenly goes into the war, and he's in a mental hospital, and then he's in the Holocaust, and you're where is this going? And again, because there's no room to breathe, it's difficult to narrow down kind of what is she saying? Where is she going with this? I mean, to me, seeing it, you know, after I first saw it, and for a couple of days, I was thinking about it. Seeing it a second time, after, you know, drawing maybe my own subjective opinions about it, I really felt it was just about this guy who had to sink so low in terms of, you know, we see all this, he murders, he rapes, he'll do anything to survive. He even killed his friend right at the, you know, in the I mean, he was forced to in the Holocaust, Francesco. And I really think, you know, you look at him looking at himself in the mirror at the end. I think he's looking at himself, to me, and feeling, shit, what's wrong with me? You know, like he has no moral center. Like he's lived his whole life doing what he needs to do to survive, and letting his kind of, you know, ignorance and I don't want to say that he was stupid, but I mean, he is somewhat idiotic.
Doesn't make the best decisions. Yeah.
Yeah, he doesn't exactly, but he never learns anything, even though everything he does is so dumb and out of his own pride, out of his own ego, and he gets into his own way. And I think really at the end, he's looking at himself when he gets back from the war, and it just holds on his face. And I think it's a little, reminds me of a little like Raging Bull. Like the guy had to sink so low for him to kind of think, man, I've got to change. You know, I don't know if that was your impression of Pasqualino here.
Yes. However, I do have two immediate thoughts regarding your observation, and something that I think I observed in real time watching it. And one is that I really appreciate Lina Wertmuller, my interpretation of her interpretation of men, which is often through the interpretation of Giannini in her movies. I think she's looking at it through empathetic eyes, actually.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And I think that she's giving us credit as complex human beings that are going through specifically male issues. But two, I think all of that, and I agree with everything you said, by the way, what you're observing through him, I think all of that is her commentary on modern Italian culture, or what I should say is 20th century Italian culture, and the course that Italian culture went through fascism, through World War II, and the choices that people made to go a certain way, and then the immediate aftermath of it after World War II. There is definitely a machismo, and a lot of her stuff, she is Southern Italian. She makes that clear. You can't escape her commentary in all her movies on North versus South. Italians in Italy, by and large, generally do not have the national pride of being Italians that, say, even the French have, being French. And it's all because of this shame over a conscious choice that was made by a nation to follow Mussolini, that she starts the movie with an image of Mussolini and his posturing with Hitler, going down that rabbit hole. And we suffered for decisions, I say as Italians, suffered for decisions that Italians made and learned from and don't want to return to. And I think that's kind of the nugget of everything, even down to the characterization of Pasqualino. It's such a tragedy. I understand defending your family's honor, your sister's honor, but the notion that you have to come to blows, that is something that perhaps men have inflicted on the world. Not that we're all guilty of it. We all have the potential for it. But the notion that you have to kill the guy, that you have to, send his body parts into 3 different cities, the fact that he got off, man,
Yeah.
murder, and all he has to do is serve sick people, which is an altruistic thing, the mentally ill, and he sees that as an opportunity to rape a woman tied to a bed.
Oh God, yeah.
But given that, I think Lina Wertmuller, I don't think she's pointing a finger. I think she's holding up a mirror.
Exactly.
And even though, and I can take the criticism,
Yeah.
I can take it that this is something that is part of our half of humanity, even if I'm not guilty of it. And I think that's what she's painting on the canvas, is a mirror and a portrait. And I think that inherently means that she respects men and masculinity, and respects the fact that we occupy half this world that we share. And do we have the courage to look at that and say, you know what, that does exist, and what can we do about this?
Right. Yeah. No, very well said. No, you brought up a good point, because you're right. It's like his way of resolving things always is to turn to violence, and even before the war, when you see his sister is working at she's not really a stripper, she's like a burlesque, it looks like not even really burlesque, some kind of raunchy sort of dance show. And the only way he can stop it is to, smack her around, threaten the guy who hired her, who said he was going to marry her. And then, he then put a gun to him, and accidentally the trigger goes off. It's a good point, because I don't think he knows what else to do. And as you said, it's just how people have been taught to deal with things, and he's no different. So then when he's in a mental institution, when he's in the war, it's the same thing. It's, I'll use violence, or I'll use seduction in the case of, the Nazi that he tries to seduce in order to survive. There's just nothing else that there's nothing else that he knew what to do or how to deal with any of this. And it's really fascinating to me. And you're right in the sense that at the end, it's a literal mirror that he's looking into, and he must just be thinking, I've got to be making better choices. I've got to do something else in order to solve my problems. But then again, he even says to that woman he's going to marry, we've got to have 30 kids. We need an army, So,
Yeah.
so, and you can understand.
Because of a future overpopulation, like the Spanish communist in the concentration camp mentioned.
Yeah. So I'm really fascinated by him, and people can come to all sorts of conclusions, because she's not, we have our quote unquote protagonist who's doing horrible things, right? It's not like a clear protagonist, clear antagonist. He does all sorts of horrible things. So you don't know, is she siding with him, or is she empathizing with him, or is he a victim? Is he this, is he a victim of his society? As you said, she's empathizing and holding up the mirror, and then you can really draw your own conclusions. And I love movies like that, because every time we look at it, we'll see something else. I'm just in my 2 viewings, I certainly was seeing different things with each viewing, which really, really fascinated me. Touching on, this is something that I find is sort of, I don't really quite know how I feel about it, but how do you feel about the fact of people using something like the Holocaust in order to tell their stories, if it's not really directly about, like in this case, I didn't feel that it was directly about the Holocaust, but they were using it, and the war. Obviously, the war is a big part of it. Do you think that is appropriate to tell a story about this man, or what do you think?
Well, the short answer is yes, I do. But that's an interesting topic of discussion you bring up. Sidney Lumet is the one that said the Holocaust was not the first time in history where 6 million people were murdered in one shot. It may have been the first time in history that 6 million people were murdered by their neighbors. And that was totally unfathomable for my whole life up until my early adulthood. And now I could really see that happening. And so I have a different take now on the Holocaust, where I think, hell yes, it already was the most documented event in history. I think we definitely need to learn about it. We need to learn about the Armenian Holocaust. We need to learn about everything. That's the extreme result of choices made by allegedly rational people, and people who are good people and nevertheless make these choices. So I don't think it's inappropriate. People, if you look at Life is Beautiful, people kind of had a backlash where it was making fun of it. And of course, though comedians express sadness and solace in their own way, and no, it wasn't a realistic view of a concentration camp. But art, I don't know why we have this sense of ownership specifically over movies. Is every painting you see a literal depiction of what something looks like before your bare eyes? No, that's why it's a painting. I'll look at a photograph if I want to look at a photograph. And music's the same way. So I do think it's quite appropriate. I would say now maybe more than ever.
It's a part of the story, but it was an essential part of something that I feel this man had to go through. Now, maybe it would have been something, maybe they could have used something else. But if it takes place in the war, and it's taking place during fascism, and it's taking where this man evolves as a result of that, then I don't see why not. Because at the same time, we're also feeling the horrors of it. I mean, those scenes are, here we have like where some scenes are funny. Suddenly he gets caught and thrown into a concentration camp. And we're seeing, men hung. We're seeing men getting beaten. We're seeing all sorts of waking up. When they wake up, they're getting hit just in order to wake up with whips and so forth. And, you even see him and his friend Francesco watching and the horrors of it, and thinking, God, what has happened here? How have we sunk this far? And even and Pasqualino even says, how the Jewish people, they were so smart. Why are we just letting this happen? And of course, to him, he tries to find a way out, and it plays in this humor where you feel like, should I be laughing? Because he goes to seduce the Nazi, played brilliantly by Stacy Stoller, and that's the only thing he can think of. As his mother said to him, every woman has a bit of goodness or sugar in her, and you gotta go towards it and find it. And also because he sees himself as this guy that women love.
If there's anyone to do it, I'm the man.
If I'm the one to do it. Yeah, and I couldn't help but laugh and cry and cringe and feel anger all in those scenes with her when he says, I love you. And, she sees right through him, and she basically brings him to her level, and say, okay, well, if you can't get in an erection, then I'm going to kill you. And, then he does. He manages to do it by thinking of other lovers and so forth. And he eats first. And
what a poor specimen of masculinity. Couldn't get it up in a concentration camp. I mean, go figure. Talk about the pressure. Yeah.
Oh my God. It's wow. I mean, how she even thought of that is beyond me. But emotionally, I'm feeling so much. And then, she basically says, okay, well, you're now in charge of the of your barrack, so to speak, and you have to kill 6 of those men. And you see he's torn, but he'll easily do. This guy's he wants to survive. He will easily make that choice, even though his friends basically say, don't do it. Let them all kill us. That's exactly what they want. And he was willing to. And you can understand why. I mean, if I was in that position, they put a gun to me and said, kill this guy, and even though he's your friend, I don't know what I would do. How could we know unless we're in that situation? But those scenes are just wow. I mean, I don't know how you felt. What is going through your heart as you watch them? I'm curious.
Well, yes, I had all these visceral reactions. It's a movie, and I'm open there as a spectator. But I chalk all this up to giving credit to Lina Wertmuller for having such access into the shared human condition. And these things you're mentioning, I think that feminists really didn't care for her, which is
That's
so
true.
weird.
Yeah, I've
Because
read
I
that.
don't think she's letting women off the hook either.
Right.
And so when you're in the concentration camp, yes, I agree. She's showing authentic male behavior of him posturing around Naples as if he's the man. And then in the concentration camp, the notion that seducing the woman is if you're going to be able to do that in a concentration camp, for God's sakes. Yes, it's absurd, and men go to absurd lengths. Kudos to the director if on the canvas of World War II and something as real as the Holocaust, if she's able to depict that. And of course, it's all a metaphor, I think, for what for her was contemporary Italian society.
Yeah, no, I agree. And it's not so black and, she also shows that I think we look at the war as very black and white, not, fascist versus everyone, but there were people who would do things in order to survive. And so I'll work with them, and obviously he was willing to using seduction to quote unquote, and he does work with them. She says you're gonna have to kill 6 of your men. He gladly does it. You even see some of the other prisoners dressed as who are also in charge of the barracks, so they're obviously compromised and made decisions in order to work with the Nazis in order to survive. That's what's so interesting about those 70s European art films, like that were about really centered around the war, like even in The Night Porter. You saw that not everything was so black and white, that we kind of perceive that time. But you can understand that people would make those choices because they thought it's death, or I have to sell my soul, so to speak. And he basically does. They say kill your friend, and his friend begs him to do it because he was just not willing to live this way anymore. And I just love that the silence of after that moment, and the camera pulls back to show everyone just kneeling and not saying a word. And it really, to me, is the only time the audience can breathe, and it's that moment of, God, what have you done? What, not so much what have you done, but I don't even know what it is. There's not even any thoughts. It's jaw dropping, and it's total silence, and it just it really, I think, is about what he felt he had to do. I'm curious how you feel about the use of flashback, because you're not quite certain if the flashbacks are his memory at time, or I think at times it certainly was. Like, for example, when he's singing that song in the middle of the wherever they were in that camp, and in order to get the female Nazis' attention, right before that, it's this flashback of him in the mental institution, and he commits this rape, and the doctor says to him, hey, you know how you can get out of here, go into the war. They're even taking people out of mental hospitals with certain exceptions. He's like, oh God, I can't take another day in here. So he makes it even worse for himself. And I mean, Jesus, that even though he was in this mental institution, I think at one point after the rape, they put him on a certain floor where people were just crying and naked, and you're like, God. But that looked like heaven compared to where he wound up. It was it's a great irony in the sense. I took that as that he was thinking about it at that point. But what did you think? Was it a combination of a flashback, his memory, or what? I'm curious.
It's again, it's a great question that really comes down to craft as opposed to like theme. I think she does show in the beginning, well, after that amazing sort of preamble of like a disc jockey or something narrating this war footage.
It's so weird. I love it. Yeah. I don't know what the hell that is, but
I think that was literally her throwing all the themes up front that a contemporary Italy was going through, a post-World War II Italy was going through. And I think she was shoving in the face of her fellow Italians by showing fascist war footage in juxtaposition with that. but she dumps us right into a moral dilemma by showing Pasqualino and his friend witnessing the massacre of those people, and then it does go into to flashback. I think that in the one that you're particularly referring to, I do think that's poignant because you're right. What he was going through in the hospital was paradise compared to when Pasqualino was singing alone to get the attention of the woman in the concentration camp. He's thinking back to when, wow, man, if I only knew then how good it was.
Yes, exactly.
Yes, things were shit, but look at the whole picture. Don't lose the forest for the trees. And I think that's the comment that she's making specifically with that flashback. So I think that's actually an amazingly placed flashback showing his characterization and his regrets.
Fernando Reyes at this, and I'm sure people who don't know him, it's more of his work in Italian and Spanish cinema, would probably know him most for French Connection 2. But here he plays someone in the concentration camp, becomes a friend with Pasqualino and Francesco, and he has this speech which is interesting about how people are. He basically says people are savages. There's more people now than there ever was. 200 years ago, and now there's going to be more and more population, and people are going to kill families for a piece of bread. But there is going to be a man who will be born who will bring harmony within in the disorder, and that sort of triggers Pasqualino to another flashback. And I'm not sure if he thinks he's that man, if he's the man who could bring harmony into the disorder.
I think he's definitely the one to think, wow, that was a speech based on party ideology, which he doesn't give a damn about. He doesn't really give a damn about party ideology. But if there was to be a man,
he even says that earlier when he's about to go to prison and he meets the guy who's a socialist. And he's like, politics are boring.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, during the war,
28 years. Yeah, he went to jail for 28 years because he's not a fascist. That's 10.
And exactly.
But yeah.
No, I again, that was a moment where I was, it's really up to the audience what he thinks about that, because then it flashes back. And I love this whole, he gets caught, he kills this guy, he tries to cuts the body up and tries to send it to 3 different cities, and he's so sure that it's going to work, and immediately we see the cops are after him. The plan goes to shit, and he tells his lawyer, the lawyer thinks he's crazy that he confessed, and he says it was out of honor. So I don't know if he did that because he sort of liked the attention that he was the monster of Naples. Even when he was talking to the socialists, he's like, hey, you know who I am? The monster of Naples. He was willing to go to prison, and he refused, again, out of pride, he refuses to say that he did it out of being insane, because that would make him look bad from his side of things. And I love that trial scene because there's no dialogue. It just cuts to him looking at his family. The lawyer looks very happy. You get the impression that obviously he's going to say he's insane, and he does. But you don't know why he makes that choice. Is it because that he didn't want the women to have to be prostituting themselves? He finds out that his sister was prostituting herself in order to survive, was his mother tells him. You don't know. That was the impression I got, that he did it because he didn't want his family to have to do that, if he has to go to the jail for the rest of his life. I was curious what you thought where his decision came from, because she very cleverly does not make it clear on purpose, which I liked. So I was curious what you thought about that.
My impression was it was just that why he eventually says that he was crazy to get to an asylum isn't as important as what happens once he's in the asylum. And she could have she could have just cut from him telling his lawyer I'm not going to do that, to him being in the asylum. And then you get it. Okay, he ended
Yeah.
up doing it, and then it
Yeah.
really doesn't matter. But I think she shows enough in that scene where you can draw your own conclusions without her having to do something as perhaps banal in her mind, at least, because it's a choice, and you could have made the choice the other way, to show and explain through testimony.
Right.
But I think the we're interpreting here, but I do think the point kind of comes across. He does see the family,
Yeah.
and if he goes to jail forever, or the firing squad, for murder, then it's not going to help his family. And maybe she's also alluding to this sense of accountability that he does have as, to use a Latin term, the pater familias, the head of the household. With his sisters, yeah, he smacks them around, I'm gonna make sure this guy marries you, and it's honor, again, because women don't have the freedom to have equal responsibility, let alone access to society. But I
Right.
think he does have that, and it's great that she was able to do that visually, and with brevity.
Yes.
I think
Yeah.
because, again, it's more important what happens in the asylum than the choice to go into it. But she does
Yes.
address that in ways that you pointed out.
How do you feel about, what are some of the standout performances to you in this film?
Well,
It's an obvious question, but
the guard that you mentioned,
Shirley Stoller,
yeah,
yeah, she
that was
was
perfect.
great.
She was fantastic.
Yeah.
Um,
I didn't
oh,
realize she was the woman in the Honeymoon Killers
oh, oh, shit.
from the late 60s.
Yeah,
That's, I didn't
uh,
realize that was her, but that's she was in a number of things. I'm not too familiar with her career. She was also in The Deer Hunter. But she was from the Honeymoon Killers, and but I thought she was man. I mean, just the look on her face, the like
yeah,
she looked.
exactly.
I don't, she looked like she had no life.
She
Like
could
there
have
was
had no lines.
lifeless eyes.
Yeah, she could have had no lines,
Yeah.
and she would have conveyed. When Heath Ledger did Brokeback Mountain, I read him say in an interview how he looked at it as just a human being who was a rock, and everything was wrapped around that rock, that
Right.
the love, the passion, and when you look at that, it's as if he is a man speaking through and performing at a rock, through rock. And her in this movie, she's like a monolith of totalitarian presence, just being there, and that's amazing. So yes, that's, I think that, other than Giannini, is,
Yeah.
for me, the standout performance. I think, sister that's also in The Seduction of
Yeah.
Mimi.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
um maybe it's because I saw her in both movies now. I thought she just did terrific.
Yeah.
um
Yeah. Her
Giannini.
name is Elena Fiore. I'm not too familiar with her other
Oh,
than the films that she did
yeah,
with
me neither,
Wertmuller.
me neither. um
Yeah.
but I looking at Giannini's performance, I revisited why, as a younger wannabe filmmaker, the tone didn't appeal to me as much, and that's just because, probably, I think it just reminded me of my own family, and then the dinner table, um, and uh, I again, you're dealing with something that I think is authentic, but I honestly, I would have, shown a little bit more nuance in terms of tone, as opposed to pound, pound, pound the whole way. But that intensity of masculine energy is kind of like, especially when he deals with stuff like, the concentration camp, it's almost like a car going at 200 miles an hour hitting a brick wall. And so I realize now that the intensity of that portrayal, um,
Yeah.
was very suitable to what the director was, what is that respite that you talk about after he shoots the guy, if he's not that intense and going that crazy. I have to get it up, I have to have sex with this
Oh my
lady,
God. Yeah.
I have to be a He-Man, now I have to figure out how to, and then there's a little respite, and then he's informed that he has to kill these 6 guys. So it's this intensity that then is stopped reorganizes itself. So this time around, I definitely gave the performance a lot more credit than I did initially as a younger person who just felt like he was looking at his own relatives.
Well, I think, his eyes just say so
Oh
much.
yeah,
He's got those big eyes, and, Wertmuller has these incredible extreme close-ups on everybody. And she does it in
yeah.
all of her films, and they're breathtaking because you just fall into the faces and
Oh
fall into even the woman that he ends up marrying at the end, who you only see a couple of times in the movie.
yeah,
you
yeah.
know those extreme close-ups, just the emotion pouring out of their face. And even him, like when he's telling the Nazi he loves her, he's like, oh, I know that you're innocent like us and you're a victim like us. And I normally wouldn't praise, like actors who are crying so much, because acting is not crying, as Sanford Meisner, the great acting teacher, would say. But he's doing it but he's begging her. So obvious, that's just it's not that he's just sitting there trying to cry. It's coming out of him in the stillness. Like he's not even, moving his arms or his legs. It's all in that close up, which must have been really difficult to act. I mean, just to get to that, whether it just happened or he hoped for it to happen, it's stunning. I mean, it's stunning acting. I just thought he was just wow. I mean, what a great actor, who also, of course, dubbed Pacino in every movie
Yeah,
he
yeah.
did. The Italian dubbing.
I'm a Meisner trained actor, so I very much
Right.
appreciate what you say there. Um, I think that in all of her movies, something that a lot of people may not appreciate is exactly what you say. The way she frames and shoots these close-ups, I
Yes.
think in a way that is so sensual. Honestly, I think that he's not. Maybe he's not quite known this way generally, but I think that only Wong Kar-wai today frames people as passionately as, say, in the 30s and the 40s, and even Hitchcock. And maybe it has to do with composition, but even the way things are lit. Today, I think filmmakers, and I'm so sad to see this, I feel like so many filmmakers today just point the camera at something.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's
You don't
literally,
see those close-ups as much anymore. I
yeah.
rarely see it.
And screenplays are kind of just put on their feet, as opposed to frame by frame having a relationship with the frame that came before it and the one that came after it. Like in Swept Away, like, she'll be with her head back, and she occupies the frame as if she herself is a landscape from, say, the collarbone up, or whether it's his eyes in this movie showing this intensity of the moment. That's a director that understands, maybe like Bergman did too, that there's
That's
nothing
what I
as
was thinking.
interesting as the human face,
Right.
and that behavior is action. And if you're channeling that, you're right, it's not, oh, crying, there's a tear. It's
Yeah.
not pantomiming, it's not indicating, but it's kind of using your whole instrument as a means of being possessed of meaning. And she obviously recognizes that as a director.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I can watch him all day. I haven't seen Love and Anarchy yet, so I'm gonna see
Oh
that next.
yeah, he won Best Actor at Cannes for that.
Yes.
Again, she's not subtle, a farm guy going to kill Mussolini. Like, she's really she's in your face in it
I love it. Yeah.
nonstop. But it's so rewarding what she does with it. A
Oh
real
my
artist that's in
God. Yeah.
tune, a real artist that's in tune with both the specifics of the society she was making these movies in, as well as its
Absolutely.
history and shared humanity. I really think she walks in the shoes of men and women, and kind of shows us. I think Da Vinci said that if we could all see ourselves having sex, no one would ever have sex again. And, and I feel like she shows us ourselves
Oh,
in a way
yes.
that's totally the opposite of, like, social media, where everything is a fake,
It's a good point.
idealized notion of yourself, and we're even lying to ourselves by presenting ourselves this way. But she shows us um, as these wild Homo sapien animals that we are.
Oh, very well said. Very well said. I think that's a great note to end on. Well,
Okay.
Joe, thanks again for coming on. I always appreciate your time and your input and your takes on these, great films that we've been discussing. Where's the best place for people to find you? I believe it's Instagram, right?
Yeah, that's the best one-stop shop for visuals, shorts. We just posted today a complete short that we just were honored for the second time at
Oh.
the Sicily Art Cinema Festival.
Oh yes, I think I saw that. Congratulations on that.
Thanks. We had put up a trailer before when we were honored at Rome, and now we have the whole short up. It's about 9 minutes, but that's the best place to check us out. And as always, I'm glad to be here, Rob. Thanks for having me.
No, my pleasure. Yeah, thanks for taking the time to come again. And I will leave the link in the description box below if you want to check out Joe's Instagram at Zio Chicho Cinema. And I'll leave that below for everyone to check out. So Joe, thanks again, and please come again sometime.
Thank you, will do.
Thank you so much, everyone, for watching. If you are currently listening to this on the audio version of the podcast, and you've run out of episodes to listen to, head over to the YouTube channel where every single episode that I've ever recorded can be found. Go to youtube.com/Robert Bellissimo at the movies. I want to also mention that I am on Patreon. Patreon is an exclusive membership where people who sign up receive bonus content every single month. All of the content that I provide for my Patreon members is based on polls. So you vote on everything that you want to see, and you'll therefore be very much part of the decision-making as to what I record on Patreon every single month exclusively for you. It's just a few bucks a month, and it is a great help for content creators such as myself to make an income while providing free content on YouTube and audio platforms and all sorts of things that other artists use Patreon for as well. So head over to patreon.com/Robert Bellissimo at the movies for full details. And lastly, if this is your first time here, please consider subscribing to my channel by pressing the Robert Bellissimo at the movies logo. You will see it floating above my head right here to your top left in the corner in just a second. Just click on that and then click the bell in order to get a notification every time I release a new video or when I go live on YouTube. Thank you so much, everyone. I will see you in the next episode.